And welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Makana Man at YouTube with another airbrush review. Today we'll be reviewing the Iwata HP-C Plus from manufactured in Japan. This is on loan to me from a friend. He has purchased it and just come back from overseas, and it has not even been opened. It contains one standard double action gravity fed airbrush with a standard 0.3mm nozzle. The build and the specs do look very similar to what we've been familiar with the Iwata Chinese made stuff. It is considered to be the best airbrush in the industry for a very long time from professionals and hobbyists alike. There has been a lot of changes in the game very recently, so after everything I've had to play around with and use and whatnot, let's put this to the test, shall we? So I guess it's only right to quickly do an unboxing to see how it's all presented and packaged. So we do have a genuine product, very pretty black box, something we're not quite used to with some of the more basic models. A little bit of literature. This seems to be a sticker. And very standard instructions in both English and Japanese, how to quickly set up and utilize it. I'll have a quick look through it to see if there's anything that's special or new information. There is websites, service and suppliers from various countries. What I always highly recommend when purchasing an airbrush is sourcing the needles, the nozzles, parts and whatnot. Most big brand airbrushes fail in this, and you do have to acquire what you need overseas, which does cost a small fortune. Iwata, on the other hand, their bits and pieces is fairly accessible in most countries, regions or continents. So if you are sitting on an Iwata airbrush, finding parts is not going to be bank busting if you go on a parts website, and we've got a bit of a list here. Inside the foam, it congratulates on your genius for pulling it apart. In cardboard, the box doesn't break easily at all, so very suitable for shipping, and fits quite snug. Everything's nicely made and polished. Wrench has Iwata written on it. Looks to be a standard size nozzle thread. And we've got the model, beautifully polished. Surprisingly very smooth to operate. And the lid is sufficiently tight. And that is pretty much a very standard nozzle, which would probably share the same thread as our Hysings and budget airbrushes. So we've got a beautiful body here, and we will have a quick look at the taper of the nozzle. Bit of a washer there, very nice tight fit, and that does look like a standard taper. We'll go get a needle out. The top is the Iwata nozzle, needle. It is sufficiently more polished. You can polish your cheaper needles, and it is a tad longer. A longer taper is not necessarily a bad thing, as the shorter ones can fit inside. Cheap needle, Iwata needle. The lubricant seems to be a very high velocity, similar to machine oil. Claims to not be silicone, others can be found like that with a syringe tip. It appears that the nozzle seems to be significantly shorter than the high-sing nozzle, so you will have to get replacement Iwata nozzles. It's not quite going to be compatible. Though it does fit in the housing. If you were to replace the crown, then you can do that as a source of cheaper parts. We have the breakdown of all the parts. I found the O-rings to be very tight and the seals to be very vacuumish. The fitting is very, very beautiful. I would not necessarily dip this in any sort of solvents when cleaning. Just pull it apart and give it a thorough wipe down. Use a brush on change the colour. Just flush it sufficiently with thinner. The occasional light solvent bath would not do it too much harm, but once those seals start to die, then you'll start having the same air leaks and loss of atomization as you do with other airbrushes. Though to improve that, we shall lubricate the internals as we always do. Instead of using that high velocity stuff, we'll use our usual Vaseline in a lighter dose and a cotton swab and assembler. Everything is beautifully lubricated. We shall start assembling. All I did using the swab and the Vaseline was very lightly coat the walls of the inside. And this part, the T part, and the inside of that component. That's all about it. With the cheaper ones, you generally go a bit thicker because there's a much looser tolerance. This is far more tighter, so it's just merely glazing the surface. Now, one of the things you wish to do very regularly on these airbrushes is remove the nozzle, get a brush or something, wipe it out, and try to feed any gunk into the cup and remove when fully disassembled. You will get debris, lint and whatnot. It will sit in the nozzle, and if you keep forcing the needle, it's going to eventually split your nozzle, clog it, jam it, all that damage. If you very regularly clean out that nozzle, most likely part replacement will not occur regularly, or if you're very, very lucky, it will never have to happen, period. You want the thread to bite into the other thread, the hole. Screw it in as far as you can. Get the wrench. And I always say this in every video, you want to twist it with as little strength or force as humanly possible. So it has tension. I've only got one finger on it and just about 1/8 of a twist. And that's enough for the O-ring, the metal to bite in, so that seal is absolutely solid. Once we fill it up with water, and we do the backwash method, if we see any bubbles coming up as we're usually spraying, it means there's a leak there. We could use the beeswax method, a video to check out. Being a brand spanking new airbrush, it's just purely not tight enough. Overly torque it, because it's so tiny, you'll shear the thread off, the top will fall, the thread will remain inside. In the event that does happen, we also have a video for that. Chuck on the crown, so if we drop it, bump it, or whatever, we do not damage the nozzle. Now this piece is very easy to lose. With tweezers, you very gently drop it into this hole here. Get it down in the little air valve and push with either the tip of your tweezers or the back of your needle. Be very careful, do it in a clean area, as you do not want to lose that part. It is a common part to lose. It funneled in very well, mostly due to the amount of practice I've had. Keep repeating it and you'll be very quick at it as well. We're going to insert the air valve or solenoid in the back, nice and tight. Again, with the rear end of your needle, you've got to push down and we're going to see the little bit of brass coming out. It's got nice spring, nice tension. It's absolutely ready to go. Next, we're going to put the spring on top of this long piece. This is the trigger for the tongue to go backwards and forwards. It pinches the needle and it drags the needle with it. This nicely sits in there, though before we put that in there, we have the trigger, and the trigger sits up and down. There's a nice little channel for it to sit in. It's raised a little more than other models of airbrushes. This sits in there, and then we've got the guiding rod that goes right over. Surprisingly, very, very easy model, and due to its tolerance, quick to disassemble and reassemble. A big bonus when dealing with airbrushes and how long or short of amount of time you want to maintain it. If you do things like commissions, work professionally, and time is a huge factor, this is most likely the airbrush for you. The needle goes all the way through. If there's any sort of resistance, you stop. We can see that it's gone all the way through to the nozzle. Too much force and you will split the nozzle. I pulled it back just so we don't bend the very tip. Needle nut right on the end. We're able to push down, up for air, backwards and forwards for paint. And we want to work that a few times to work off any excess lubricant and make sure it's operating nice, smooth and beautifully. Finally, the back end we put on. The rear knob is a stopper, which we can see where the needle nut is, and we can control how far it goes backwards and forwards. If you want to have the stop off point, if you're painting very fine lines or something, you can only stop to a certain point if you don't have trigger discipline or control. If you have it all the way back, it's not going to interfere with your spraying whatsoever. Cap doesn't need anything. We place that on top, click. We've got a hole so air can go in and out, and it's not going to blow out if pressure goes in the opposite direction. We shall hook this up to a compressor, put some paint in her and get some lines in. So a bit of a seal test. Turn the compressor on first, obviously, and I'm not seeing any bubbles. Pull back. No bubbles. Very, very nice. And it jet bubbles without any issues. So with this clean out of thinner, which empties the cup very, very quickly, we got any imperfections and manufacturing defaults flushed out. She's nice and clean for a bit of paint. So spraying some lines. Very, very smooth to use. Fairly consistent. Things are a bit fuzzy, but a little thinner in the paint department. So here are my final tests, and I've just did a tad more tuning. Could do a bit more. Very smooth. It is right that it is a bit touchy and requires further work out of the box. It is a lovely airbrush. It was very quick to clean out. Fairly competent to use out of the box. The instructions left little to the imagination. I think it could have included a lot more tips and tricks and hints. That aside, with how quick it is to clean up, how available the parts are, if you are after a quick to buy high-end airbrush and you happen to be in Japan, this is the model for you. If you are buying it online, there's a lot of places to look and try to get a good bang for your buck. But if you already have it or about to buy it, you're not hard up. Though, being a lot older class model of airbrush, for what you are paying, it is not the best airbrush I've ever used. I'm still leaning a lot harder on the high-end Ophir. That just gives me far more control and also a very quick clean, as well as some other ones such as Hutter and Sternbeck or Renegade. These ones are probably a cut above what we have here, and with the new model coming out by Wave, I would say this is the middle of the high end of airbrushes, though it is very recognisable. It is very pretty. In conclusion, not bad at all. 8.5 out of 10 type thing. Would get one, though there are many other airbrushes I'd like to test, try and put through the ringer before I add it to my collection or not. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further videos. I have a range of airbrushes that are at my disposal at the moment, so I'll be able to punch out 2-3 of these videos in a very short period of time. Look forward to them. Catch you guys next time.